Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Clark. I regret that I cannot be there in person with you all today, but I'm excited to present remotely our paper, Perceptions of a Robot's Emotional Expressions Are Influenced by Users' Emotional State. So, there we go. As we know, social robots deliver assistive services in diverse settings, and often success in these settings rely on the robot and human user effectively communicating with one another. In many cases, this communication also involves emotional components. Can the robot and human understand the emotions either felt by the human or perceive what the robot is trying to communicate as well? There's a known phenomenon in psychology called emotional projection, which can cause effective misunderstandings. Emotional projection is basically the concept that humans, when perceiving someone else's emotions, will often see their emotional state as similar to their own. So in other words, if you're in a good mood, you might perceive other people as being in a better mood than they actually are. And this projection has been seen with non-humans as well. So we project our emotions onto animals and events. But there's been no study that's explicitly investigated whether or not emotional projection occurs within social robots. So we set out to do just that. We ran a user study with 64 participants between the ages of 19 and 37. And these participants watched 6 short videos with a Now robot. And after each video, the robot made an emotionally ambiguous expression, which I'll give an example on the following slide. And after that, the participants were asked to report the emotion that they felt after watching the video and the emotion they perceived the robot as expressing. We also, to make sure that if the videos were not encouraging different emotions, we also did some work to make sure try to put participants in stress states throughout the study. So we also collected their subjective anxiety reports and their heart rate data. As I mentioned, participants watched 6 videos with the robot. We selected a wide variety of videos, hoping to evoke different emotions. So as you can see, they ranged from fashion models tripping and falling on the runway to the scene of The Lion King, where Simba finds Mufasa's body after the stampede. The goal was, again, to evoke different emotions from different videos. So you can see in our post hoc analysis here, generally speaking, they did evoke different emotions. 2 of them did frequently evoke interest, but the analysis we do never assumed that participants would feel a specific way after the video. We always use their felt emotions as a ground truth. So as long as they're feeling somewhat different, that's okay. And as I mentioned, the Now would make an emotionally ambiguous expression after each video. So I'm going to get an example running here while I describe how we made these. Essentially, we took ambiguous phrases like and put it into the Now's AL animated speech module and just let the Now's reaction, or let whatever the Now generated for that phrase be the reaction. So you can see here, it's just kind of crossing its arms, which doesn't have an overly clear and emotional component to it. And then, as I've mentioned several times, we collected the emotion that participants felt after watching each video and the emotion they perceived the robot as expressing. To do this, we used the Geneva emotion wheel. So for those unfamiliar, participants can basically select any relevant emotions from this wheel by just pointing at them. And they can also specify the intensity of each emotion by using the circles on the inside of the wheel. The emotions are organized by metrics called valence and control. So valence is the same as it is in the circumplex model, basically indicating whether the emotion is positive or negative. And control basically is a little bit more complex, but basically indicates how well the user can suppress or, for lack of a better word, control the emotion. So moving on to our complex study design here, we also, to make sure that participants were actually experiencing different internal states, we also went out of our way to make sure that they were stressed before watching some of the videos. To do this, we used the Trier Social Stress Test, or the TSST. So the TSST involves 3 different parts and invokes stress through fear of uncertainty and social anxiety to an extent. Basically, participants are, without warning, told that they're going to give a speech on their future career plans, and they're given 5 minutes to prepare for that. And after those 5 minutes are up, they, instead of being told to deliver the speech, they are then asked to do some challenging mental arithmetic. I think in our case, it was subtract some large number, like 1,942 by downwards by intervals of 37, and they go as far as they can over 5 minutes in their head. And then once they finish the mental arithmetic, they are asked to then deliver the speech they had planned. And the entire time they're doing this, and the researcher is sitting in the corner of the room, just expressionlessly watching them. And the only time that they speak is to give instructions between each stage, or upon ending the speech delivery, they will continue to prod the participant, basically saying, come on, there's more time left, keep going. So that is intended to evoke stress. And to measure that, we use 2 different measurements. The first one being subjective anxiety, captured through the STAI-6, which is a widely used questionnaire for measuring stress and anxiety. And then we also collected heart rate data to measure physiological stress. I talk about this in the paper, but there was unfortunately some problems with the heart rate sensor. So the sample size had to be slightly smaller when we were using the heart rate data. As a result, we didn't see many significant tests there because about a quarter of the data was just saying that they had no heart rate. So instead, I won't talk about physiological stress during this presentation for the sake of time, but if you want us to read about it, it's in the paper. And I know that study design is kind of complex, so here's a visualization of it. So in each video session, participants watched 3 videos and reported the emotions after each of those videos. So as you can see, all participants did 2 different sets of 3 videos and did the Trier social stress test before either the first set of 3 or the second set of 3 to make sure that they were in that altered state. Participants were also given an opportunity to calm down, which I didn't really talk about, but basically they got to play with stress toys while watching videos helping with like meditative videos. So our analysis focused on 2 main questions. The first being, how did the participants' emotional states relate to how they perceived the robot's expression? And how did familiarity with the robot change any of the effects that we saw? Our analysis used linear mixed models to account for the multiple independent variables and the individualized differences. So the first question we looked at sorry, I'm getting a feedback all of a sudden, but I'll keep going. So participants actually projecting their emotions onto the robot. And we found that when participants selected they were feeling emotions with higher valence, they were also selecting the robot as expressing emotions with higher valence. Same was seen for control and the emotion intensity. However, we did not see any relationship between participants' stress and their perceived emotions. Stress, however, did relate to how certain the participants were of the robot's expressions. When participants were in higher stress states, they were selecting more emotions to try to describe the robot. They were having a harder time defining the robot with just one expression. We didn't see any relationship between the felt emotions and number of emotions chosen. And finally, the familiarity effect, we did find altered the emotional projection to a certain extent. They projected valence less later on in the study, but not for intensity or control. And also, generally speaking, participants were more certain of the robot's expressions later on in the study as well. So knowing that I'm tight on time here, in conclusion, our key findings were that participants seem to be projecting their emotions onto the robot's expressions. And then participants in stress states were just less sure of what the robot was trying to express, when in reality, of course, it was expressing nothing. And then familiarity with the robot may weaken these effects I just mentioned. Naturally, our work is not without limitations, first being that the Geneva emotion wheel lacks a traditional arousal measurement, which might harm the generalizability. And then also, we intentionally used ambiguous expressions to reduce the potential confounds of our study. But in the wild, it's unlikely that a designer will intentionally want a robot's expression to be vague, so results should be validated against a study where the robot's expressions are more definitive. Thank you for listening.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you. So yes, I'm Jason Wilson, better known as Willie Wilson, and I'm here to talk about a new theory of mind benchmark that we are developing. It's called ThKT, and so this is a benchmark for socially assisted robots with theory of mind of children assembling tangram puzzles. So theory of mind has been a growing topic in AI, and it's also now becoming a growing topic here in human-robot interaction as well. And over the past decade or so in which this has been explored, there's been a variety of approaches for evaluating the theory of mind. Some of them I would say are perhaps effective, but maybe a little simple, and we need to move beyond this. Many of them might have a fairly simplified goal that can be expressed with a single expression, like you're at a particular food truck. Often the plans are very predictable, meaning that there's only one shortest path to a particular goal. And so if you're on that shortest path, you're probably going to that goal. Similarly, there might only be a small number of goals possible from a particular action or from a particular plan. So these are predictable and legible plans. So here in ThKT benchmark, we're looking at some additional criteria. One is that we want to have slightly more complex goals, something that's expressed in more than just a single expression. Ambiguity in plans. So there's many different possible ways to complete a task. And that's the noise. The data is actually quite noisy. There's a lot of mistakes that the children make in order to complete these puzzles. So this is from a previous study where we had children assembling tangram puzzles with the assistance of a social robot, a mystery robot in this case. 34 children assembled these puzzles, and the video, their interaction was recorded from 3 different camera angles. And then we went through all of the videos to manually encode the assembly of the puzzle at each stage. How do we actually represent each of these puzzle structures? So we developed this novel representation, a polygon adjacency representation, to define the relationship between each of the puzzle pieces. And so together, these relationships can completely define the final puzzle. Let me briefly give you a little description of what these representations are showing. So we have 6 possible relationships. I'm only going to discuss just a couple. For example, this connection right here between the red and the blue one, they're connected with a single vertex. So we call that a vertex connection. We also might have a edge-to-edge connection like we have here on the left, and it fully meets the entire width of both pieces. In this example, we actually have one of these relationships that's correct, and the 2 red relationships incorrect, right? That is where the blue piece belongs, and so that relationship with the yellow square is correct. That's not where the red piece belongs, and so its relationship with the yellow square is incorrect, and its relationship with the blue triangle is also incorrect. So in this data set, we have 34 children, 15 of them assembled a cat, 19 of them assembled a rabbit. Every time that the state of the puzzle changed is when we encoded a new representation. So it might start off with something simple, they make a few mistakes, and they continue along until finally you have the final complete puzzle. One thing that you can see here is that clearly they're making some mistakes. So if you look at that top row, none of those probably actually really resemble the cat all that much. None of those pieces are in the correct position. And finally, when you get down to the second row, you're starting to see them put in the correct position. So children clearly make many mistakes. Some of them are actually very quick at this. Some of them need only 6 states to be able to complete the puzzle. Others need as many as 42 states to complete the puzzle. So on average, they took just under 13 steps to be able to complete the puzzle. Clearly, this is very difficult for some of them. Only 47% of the children got the first 2 pieces correct on their first step. But as they went along, they got more and more successful, but still, even when they had 6 pieces correctly connected, they still only would make the next step correctly 70% of the time. So as you can see, there's clearly a lot of different errors, and there's also clearly many different paths that they might take towards a particular goal. So in addition to having having this data set, we also are providing 2 baseline evaluations. One of them is using a large language model, of course. Another one is also using some analogical reasoning. Both of these approaches, we give more or less the same input. We're giving them a representation of the puzzle. This is a snippet of what that representation looks like. So all of this is written in predicate calculus. The top half is mostly a description of all the different puzzle pieces. And then the bottom portion here actually describes the relationship between the pieces. To evaluate how each of these are working, we are going to look at each combination of correct relationships and incorrect relationships. So there's going to be 8 correct relationships in a complete puzzle, and you can have many more incorrect relationships as we go. So the large language model that we used was Claude Sonnet 3.5. We didn't do any fine tuning or prompt engineering. We really were trying to just come up with a baseline evaluation that is fairly similar to how we're evaluating the analogy model. Temperature was at 0.8, so there was some variance, and we did a best of 3 voting scheme. And you can see here the system prompt that we provide, basically describing the puzzle, describing what are the different types of relationships that we're using, and then telling them what the LLM's task is to do. For analogy, we're actually using a concept called structure mapping. And it uses the structure mapping engine to be able to find similarities between different structures. So if we take the representation that I showed 2 slides ago and represent it as a graph, you'll see something like this. And then on the left, we have the graph that represents that assembly of puzzles. And then on the right, we have a portion of what a final puzzle assembly looks like. And the shaded pieces on the left match the shaded pieces on the right in terms of similar structure. So we compare the structure on the left with the 2 possible structures for the cat and the rabbit and take the one that is most structurally similar. And this is a deterministic algorithm, so we only need to run it once for each example. Overall, the large language model had about 60% accuracy. And you can see here on the heat map up here, the left side is, or the vertical side is showing the number of correct expressions. So finally at the bottom left, where it says 0.79, that means 79% of the time that the puzzle was complete with no mistakes, the LLM got it correct 79% of the time. The analogy here on the bottom, overall got it correct 75% of the time. We can see that once there was 5 correct relationships, it got it right 100% of the time, regardless of how many incorrect expressions there were. The right side, I'm kind of blurring out a little bit because each of those squares has only 3 or fewer examples, and so probably not quite as interesting or significant. So overall, our contributions are this new data set, 436 observed puzzle states, and we have 2 baseline evaluations, one a very untuned, very simple LLM, and also an analogy approach. And we really believe that this addresses some of the objectives that we set out for, has more goal complexity. Each of these goals are expressed through 8 interrelated expressions. Plan predictability and legibility. This is much more ambiguous. There are 7 factorial optimal plans for each of these puzzles. And the data is very noisy. The children, in some cases, were making a lot of mistakes. It was very unclear and confusing as to what the child is perhaps doing at some points in the puzzle. Of course, all of this was manually encoded relationship data, so my undergrads were going very carefully and painstakingly through the videos to identify, is that vector connection, is that vector edge connection? As I said, we had no LLM fine tuning or prompt engineering because we were just trying to do a baseline. We did momentarily test out using this on a VLM. The images that we had from the video were very low resolution. So as soon as we put those images into the VLM, it would immediately complain that it was too low resolution. We still shoved it through anyways, and it got it right about 50% of the time, so about chance. Great, so thank you to my co-authors, Arena, Mark, and Laura. The QR codes for the paper and for the data set. And of course, thank you to NSF for my funders, and I'm happy to take questions.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Lorenzo De Rigo, and I am a PhD student at University of Naples Federico II. Today, I'm here to share with you the results of our latest results in theory of mind. And let me be honest with you, when it comes to second order theory of mind, sometimes I get lost myself. So today, probably you will get lost with me, but I'll try to do my best. And so, theory of mind is, well, the ability to infer other mental states. And this is something that we usually usually use every day, even if we are not conscious of it. Well, if I'm able to, to think what others are thinking about a situation, I am more able to help you and to know what are your needs. And this is particularly important when it comes to the HRI, to build trust, to build affordance, and to avoid misunderstanding. So when it comes to HRI, the theory of mind comes to the question, do humans attribute mental states to robots? And of course, I'm not here to say yes or no today, but I'm trying to give you some insight, because more often the question is, what are those features that make that affects the human perception of the robot's mental state? And for this reason, in our experiment, we equipped the robot, the Pepper robot, with two different behaviors to see if this behavioral programming, affect the human perception of the robot mental state. And we used a well-known test that to assess the theory of mind, that is a false belief task known as Sellian test, that was invented in the early 80s, and it's basically played with two players, Sally and Dan, and an external observer. You have two boxes and a ball. Sally put the ball in one of the boxes, then exit from the room, then Anne swap the ball between the two boxes, and then Sally comes back, and then is asked to the external observer, well, where do you think that Sally will look for the ball? In that moment, if the observer is capable of distinguish his own mental state from the one of Sally, well, he will have a theory of mind, he will have a false belief, and he will pass the test. In the other case, he will not pass the test. So what I've just mentioned is a first order TOM, a first order theory of mind. So what other things? I can think what other things, but this is well investigated in HRI. And what we did in our experiment is investing about the second order TOM. That is something more tricky. Just to keep in mind the example of the Sellian test, is like we ask to the external observer, what do you think that, where do you think that Anne thinks that Sally will look for the ball? I can assure you that we are not in Inception, but this is just a second order TOM. And this is a belief about beliefs. And to do this, we had this experimental setting in which we have our Pepper robots. This is an inverted paradigm, because usually Pepper acts like Sally. In this case, Pepper acts like Anne. So it's equipped with audio vision and speech algorithm, and it sits on the one side of the table. And next to the Pepper, there is a neutral experimenter. On the other side of the table, you can see a human experimenter that acts like Sally. And we have two scenarios. Scenario one, the false belief, in which Sally leaves the room, and scenario two, in which Sally stays in the room. I can see the swapping of the two balls. I also have a video. Okay, I'm sorry for the language. I don't know if you can. Okay, it's not. Okay, it's not playing the audio, but you can see how Pepper is acting. Is more human-like. Is asking to put the ball in the red box, and then is closing the box. And after the closing box, this is Sally. Sally will leave the room, and Pepper will say goodbye. And in this moment, this is me, and I will swap the ball between the two boxes. And well, the video goes on, but I have to go ahead because the time is running out. And we use two different behaviors for Pepper, an active and a passive behaviors. The active one was the one you saw in the video. So you have more a human-like behavior. So the gestures, the speech, and all more was more fluent. While the passive one was just Pepper acting like this. It was passive, rigid, no speech, no voice, just a robot in the room that was seen at the scene. And we recorded, so for video, the two scenario and the two behaviors of the Pepper, and we collected this and used the Google form. We sent this form to 66 participants and randomly splitted 34 for the active and 32 for the passive Pepper. And this was the procedure. So we have a preliminary phase in which the participant had to read and sign an informed consent, and we had to complete some questionnaires, then see the video, complete some questionnaires, see the other part of the video, and then complete the other part of the questionnaires. This was the questionnaires that we asked to complete. The IRI, the Interpersonal Reactivity Index, was just to have a measure of the empathy of the participant, the Godspeed, the well-known Godspeed, and we just used 3 sub-dimensions of the Godspeed: the likability, the perceived intelligence, and anthropomorphism, and the false belief task. That was the crucial part. In fact, we used 5 questions for assess the false belief, and so to assess the presence of the second order term. These are the questions. Do you think Pepper would have given the same answer as Sally? Do you think Pepper knows that Sally did not see the object displacement? Where do you think that Pepper believes Sally will look for the ball? What does Pepper think Sally will do? And did Pepper demonstrate the understanding of Sally's mental state? So about the results, I will show you just the statistically significant results. And about the Godspeed, as you can see, we performed the t-test, and for all the sub-dimensions, we have a statistically significance for all the sub-dimensions. That means that the behavior programming worked. So the people who interacted with the positive with the active Pepper rated the robot as more pleasant, as more likable, as more intelligent, and so on. We also performed a chi-square test for the questions of the false belief, and 2 out of 5 of these questions were significant from a statistical point of view. But to have a deeper understanding of these results, we created this table here, in which you can see question 1 and question 2 that were the only 2 questions that resulted statistically significant. That were, did Pepper demonstrate an understanding of Sally's mental state? And question 2, do you think Pepper knows that Sally did not see object displacement? And to give you an example, when Sally left the room, so for the first scenario, in the false belief, participants in the active behavior group, so that one that you can see in the light blue in the upper side of the table, were significantly more likely to answer yes to questions about whether Pepper understood Sally's mental state, with an 88.2% against the 53%. So just to conclude, we see how the robot behavior significantly influences the perceived cognitive capabilities of the robots. Indeed, participants rated the active robots as more intelligent, anthropomorphic, likable, and also participants in the active condition attributed a second order term to the Pepper. And just as a remark, behavioral design is the key for developing socially intelligent, interpretable robots that enable natural and effective human-robot collaboration. So thanks for listening, and this is the QR code if you want to join the Braille Lab and take a look around. Thank you.
The last talk in this session, please, Kashaya. Hello, everyone. My name is Hashayar. I'm a PhD student at the University of Hertfordshire, and my main research is about robot adaptation to unseen environments. So in this work, we proposed an agentic AI that its focus is on the novelty detection and the adaptation, because we think these two components are so essential for the HRI. Because first of all, when we talk about the HRI, we are talking about the robot which will operate in the real world. And when we talk about the real world, in fact, we are talking about unpredicted and uncertain environment. So in this case, providing a data set to cover all of the situation is impossible. This is where the robot adaptations comes. But before starting the adaptation process, first of all, we need to find that which observation is a novel, because as you know, when we send every input to every AI model, it will produce the results. But in the HRI, that's the interaction, quality of interaction is so important. Distinguishing between the novel observation and familiar observation is so important. So when the robot encounter a novel situation, it has a two strategy. First of all, it needs to pass the observation to its primary decision maker to make a decision, or it should learn about that. But when the robot encountered this novel observation, in fact, the observation is unlabeled and it's only have one sample of that. So in this case, retraining the model using that unlabeled sample will degrade the AI model performance. This phenomenon called catastrophic forgetting. That is one of the challenges in this area. And yes, Kappa AI comes to address these two challenges. First of all, addressing the catastrophic forgetting, and the second of all, distinguishing between the novel observation or familiar observation. And this is the overview of the Kappa AI. Like other AI model, first of all, and as you can see in the right side, we pre-train the model, or in the AI accent using the isolated learning, we try to train the RL agent, but in parallel, we build a knowledge base for the agent. This knowledge base we'll use for the novelty detection. And then when the model trained completely, we deploy that on the robot, and the robot will use that to interact with the environment. The robot equipped with the RGB camera, and it will capture the image of the environment. And after that, using the vision language model and the LLM, we try to find the description of the model. In fact, after capturing the image of the environment, the robot will pass that image to the VLM, and the VLM will describe that image to find the main context of the environment. And then using the LLM, we ask the LLM model to extract only 5 related keywords to the description. And then we consider each of these keywords as a random variable in the probabilistic area. And based on that and the knowledge base, using the conditional probability, we try to find the similarity between the observed image, observed environment, and the robot knowledge base. And based on our experience, we found that we could create 3 different thresholds. If the rate of the similarity is more than the 90%, that means the robot observed one of the familiar or the scene tasks. Otherwise, it was between the 61 to 89%. That means robot sees one of the similar activity. For example, we trained the robot with the drinking task, and when someone else in the environment started eating some things, it could find a similarity between the eating and drinking. And for this type of the observation using the transfer learning, we assign the actions of the similar tasks, for example, the drinking to the eating. And for the dissimilar, that is the less than the 60% similarity, the learning will, we don't focus in this paper on this learning. In this paper, focus only about the novelty detection and the similar task, and the learning phase is for our next research. To clarify that, as you can see, this is the RE robot that we use in our experiment, and inside the purple rectangle, the robot camera captured the video, and then we use the VLM. Here we use the LLAVA And using the prompt, we ask the LLaVA to describe the image or the environment. As you can see, it could find that someone is in the living room as drinking water. And then we pass this description to the LLM. We use the DeepSeek to produce these 5 keywords. These 5 keywords, consider each of them as a random variable, and also to create the knowledge base is we follow these steps. In fact, for each activity, the data set we use contains 14 activities, such as the drinking, standing up, something like that. And for each of them, we create a list of the words, and each of the words in our model is considered as a random variable. And then the novelty detection using these keywords and the knowledge base tries to find the similarity between the robot knowledge and new observation. So the key component of this model is the knowledge base that contains all of the keyword or the metadata of each task, and the novelty detection that is implemented using the conditional probability and Jacquard index. We use Jacquard index to control of the overfitting and underfitting because of the coefficient that control the rate of the posterior probability. And then for the similar but novel observation, we use transfer learning to assign that most similar non-task actions to new one. And we use the RL agent and the PPO as a main or the primary decision maker. For the evaluating and testing the model, we use 2 environments. First of all, we test the model in the simulation, and then on the real world in the simulation, we use the RHM dataset that is generated and published by University of Hertfordshire to pre-train and build the knowledge base of the agent. But using the EatSense and the Polar dataset, we test the model in the right and the left side. So in the left side figure, you can see how the simulation works. We load the videos of the datasets and then extract the frames and pass to the VLM, LLM, and then to the novelty detection to find out which observation is novel and which one is not. The accuracy in the simulation was 89%, and as a sample, as you can see, for one sample, we pass this frame to the model, and the second row and the first row and the second column shows all of the keywords for the drinking that is inside the knowledge base. But below that, this is the new 5 keywords that extracted after seeing that image. That activity of eating was a novel activity for the robot, but the novelty detection could find a similarity between the eating and the drinking. And in the real world, we test using the robot and with different scenarios. And the accuracy was 80% because of the noise and unpredicted situation that was in the real world. The challenges that we faced was one of them was growing the knowledge base. After each iteration, we update the knowledge base keywords to update the frequency of the keyword or something like that. But when the number of the keyword increase, in fact, number of the likelihood function increase as well. This brings the complexity for the model. Also, because the data set that we used to build the knowledge base was created in the same area in the robot house in the University of Hertfordshire, a semantic ambiguity brings. That means all of the tags include some similar keywords. And it was really risky for us because it will confuse the model. And also in the real world, the noise and something or sensor limits was different challenges. And for the future direction, optimizing computation using another probabilistic method such as the probabilistic graphical model can reduce the complexity. We will use that. And also using fine-tuning model to fine-tune the LLM or LLaVA to help us to increase the accuracy. Thank you.